why does the Morrigan challenge us? So, let's be honest for a second. If you have felt pushed, pressured, unsettled, or even a bit hunted since you started down this path, you're not imagining it. And no, it's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's because challenge is part of how the Morrigan works. Today we're talking about the question that many of you ask, but kind of feel a bit guilty saying out loud. Why does the Morrigan challenge me instead of comforting me? Now, if that's you, take a breath. Actually, just sit right now and take yourself a deep breath. Big inhale, big exhale. You are not alone and you're not in trouble. You are meeting a goddess whose job, historically and culturally, has never been to soothe. Her function is to enforce sovereignty, protect territory, bring about change and transformation, and move people and communities when they refuse to move themselves. And right now, most of us are living in times that need movement, that need change, that need transformation. But look, we'll take this step by step. First, a bit of grounding. In Irish terms, challenge is not punishment. Challenge is alignment. And to really understand why she shows up as pressure, we need to look at what she actually does in the stories. Again, you have to have this context. Not just go with the modern assumption that she's some kind of personal spiritual mentor there at your beck and call. Like, this is such a toxic view of any deity, but especially one like the Morrigan, because it's just not in the tradition. That's not who she is. She's not a caring comforter. Don't just take my word for it, though. Gulermovich Epstein, whose dissertation is the War Goddess, it's called, is one of the most solid academic treatments of her as a war goddess, obviously, and sovereignty figure. But that whole dissertation, she is very clear on this point. The Morrigan's presence in the tales is never quiet or passive. She appears when power structures are shifting. This is why she's associated with battle, right? When kingship is under threat, when these battles are about to break loose, or sometimes when they need to happen, and she kind of gives a little push and puts something in motion that will make a big epic thing like the Táin Bó happen, right? She appears when the land itself is in a state of risk or imbalance. And she's the one who steps forward when something needs to change and nobody else wants to admit it or deal with it, in my experience. But also from the mythology. Epstein describes her role as a supernatural guarantor of order. So again, like, don't just take my word for it. I'm not just sitting here behind a microphone making shit up for you, right? This is not my personal fantasies or projections. My view of the Morrigan is so rooted and grounded in Irish cultural context, in her actual mythology and stories, as well as my own experiences of 20 plus years, plus the thousands of students at this point who are facilitated through the Morrigan Academy, through the Irish Pagan School, through everything I've ever done and taught, every presentation I've ever travelled to give all over the world, all of this. The student feedback that I get, as well as all of the years that I was guiding people to the Morrigan's cave and observing their experiences with her and getting the feedback on their experiences with her. That's what I'm talking about. This is not just my opinion, right? But anyway, Epstein describes her role as a supernatural guarantor of order. This is someone who disrupts in order to restore right relationship. She doesn't just warn you. She actually incites. She catalyzes. She forces clarity. That's her lane, and she stays in it like it always has been, and it is to this day. So that's where your experience comes in. So many of you write to me saying that you feel like she's dragging old wounds to the surface, pushing you into difficult decisions, making you uncomfortable in jobs, in relationships, in habits, or identities that used to be fine, used to feel fine. And I hear the same thing over and over again. Questions like why can't she make this easier? Like, why does it always have to be so hard, huh? Why does it feel like pressure? Why does she want so much? Why does she, like, she's kind of demanding in some ways. Like, why does she want so much? Now, let me be blunt here, because, you know, that's what you sign up for when you hang out with Lora O'Brien for a while. She's not asking for perfection. She's not asking for some perfect sacrifice or offering, or, you know, you to be a perfect person. Everything we've just described is about sovereignty, and she is asking for sovereignty. Now, sovereignty in the Irish tradition isn't like this lofty spiritual language. It's not toxic positivity of like, you have to find your personal power, you know, and here's my shamanistic weekend, Celtic shaman weekend of like, you know, for the low price of $3,000, you can come and find your personal power through sovereignty, right? That's not what we're talking about. Sovereignty in the Irish tradition, in the very ancient times here in Ireland, right up to present day, is practical. It's daily. It's about relationship. It's about interconnection as much as it is about your own personal power. It's about what you're choosing, what you're tolerating, and what you're avoiding. It's about how you hold yourself in the world and how that's a reflection of your people, your tribe. When you're out of alignment, she doesn't whisper you back into balance. She knocks, and if the door isn't open, she knocks harder. And what you really don't want is, you know, some kind of situation where the Morrigan is busting down your door and kicking your arse. Like, nobody wants that, trust me. So when you hear her knocking, maybe open the door and, you know, start to listen and take the challenge. She challenges because the role she holds is bound to movement. Again, to change, to transformation, to shifting. And it's bound to your movement, your clarity, your refusal to stay small or stuck once you develop a relationship with her. And certainly if you're contracted to her, or if you're styling yourself as some kind of Morrigan priest or priestess. And again, this is not my opinion. This is reflected in pretty much every source that we have. When she appears, things shift. Massive change happens, like no exceptions. Now, I want to share something from one of our intensive students. I won't name names, but because it speaks directly to how this works in real life. So one of my students from the Morrigan Intensive, and if you're interested in the Morrigan Intensive, it's an annual program that takes about 6 months to complete, but can take up to like 11 months. So you can go for it for a year or go through the 6 months with the program. And there is a waiting list at morrigan.academy/waiting-list, I believe. But it's on the homepage anyway. You can click on the waiting list there. Or morrigan.academy/intensive. We'll give you full details about it. That's probably an easier link to give you. Anyway, really should have prepared that in advance, sorry. But anyway, this student wrote about spending months sensing something coming. She kept getting messages in meditation and divination that pointed to upheaval. She didn't know the details, but she stayed with the work. She stayed showing up, listening, facing her shadow, tightening her boundaries bit by bit. And then a real crisis hit her family, and she was ready. Because the Morrigan is also a goddess of prophecy and divination and strategy. So if she's telling you shit needs to change, it's for a reason. So when this crisis hit my student's family, she was ready. And not because she'd been given the predictions or special protection, but because she'd been trained quietly and consistently to hold sovereignty under pressure. She wrote to me that like she had defended her boundaries, held her ground, and handled things that she would have collapsed under before. Not because she was fearless or perfect, but because she was prepared. Now, this is the pattern I really want you to see. The Morrigan doesn't challenge because she's some scary, dark, Celtic goddess. She doesn't challenge to punish you. She's not out there like with a scorecard. She like the minutiae is just not her, right? But she challenges you. If you get into a relationship with the Morrigan, she challenges to shape capacity. She needs useful humans. She's not trying to break you down for her own benefit. She's trying to build you up in ways the world you live in won't demand until the moment that it's already on fire and you're sitting in the middle of the room and you're like, oh sugar, why didn't I listen to the Morrigan, right? Hopefully you do, and hopefully you did. Every time you feel that nudge, that discomfort, that pressure, you're not being told that you're failing. You're being asked to step closer to your own sovereign centre. Your own decisions, your own authority. That's the heart of sovereignty. So let's talk about how this works day to day. I like to give you a little bit of practice. Most people imagine spiritual growth as inspiration and signs and synchronicity. And look, it can be, definitely. But in Irish terms, growth comes from reality, not from fantasy. Sovereignty is lived in the bones of your day. It's in how you get out of bed, how you deal with conflict. And like the conflict could be, honestly, for some people, the conflict could be whether you're going to brush your teeth or not, or have a shower or not. The conflict could be, you're literally going out to be front and centre on an activism picket line. You're facing down militia force that has been government sanctioned and protecting your neighbours. Like that, conflict is going to be relevant to whoever is facing that conflict, and one is not more important than the other. I mean, we can look at the big picture and all the rest of it, but with regard to your own sovereignty, whatever conflict you're facing when you get out of bed every morning, that's how you deal with that. The boundaries that you set or fail to set, the choices that you keep avoiding. When she challenges you, she's pointing to movement and change that's overdue. So, here's your micro practice for today, your challenge, should you choose to accept it. It's really simple, it's really small, it's the kind of thing you can do half asleep at the kitchen counter with a cup of tea. And it'll give you like the feeling of a win or a felt win in under a minute, right? So take one tiny boundary in your life, just one, and reinforce it today. That's it. Not a dramatic confrontation, not a whole new spiritual routine, just one boundary tightened. It might be turning off work notifications after a certain hour when you're not actually being paid to work. It might be saying no to something that you always say yes to but actually don't want to do. It might be closing the laptop on time, on schedule, or turning off the phone. It might be protecting your lunch break or taking a break, making sure that you get a small break during your day that somebody else steps in and covers for you. It might be asking for help instead of swallowing the overwhelm. When you reinforce a boundary, you are practicing sovereignty in real time. And because sovereignty is her domain, that small act puts you into direct alignment with the Morrigan, and you will feel the difference. The win that you'll notice today is better clarity, a bit more space in your chest, a bit more steadiness in your spine, a bit more of your attention and your focus coming back home. And that's the point. So if you're into journaling, if you're journaling along with the series, with the podcast, and if not, why not? Because it's good for you. So your journal prompt is, what boundary is she asking me to reinforce before anything else? Now try not to overthink it. Just, start writing, let it flow. Your body actually already knows the answer. Your spirit probably knows the answer too. Now, if this episode landed for you, if you want to get more grounding, listen back to our previous episodes. And if you want to go deeper, the Understanding the Goddess Morrigan course is always there when you're ready for solid foundations, not noise. Just go to morrigan.academy and you'll find it in the courses tab up top. And before we close, just a final reminder. If the Morrigan is challenging you, it's not because you've disappointed her. Honestly, this is going to sound really harsh, I know, but she doesn't care enough to be disappointed by individual people. She's got big shit going on, right? But she does see potential that you haven't claimed yet. She's not breaking you down. She's calling you forward. She's asking you to step up into her army, basically. Now, if you feel like the Morrigan is calling you, or if you're calling to her and you need solid ground to stand on, I do recommend that you get my book, The Morrigan, Ireland's Goddess, Sovereign Secrets from an Irish View, by myself, Lora O'Brien, here at the Morrigan Academy, and it's available wherever books are sold. Please get it. Please leave a review. We've got some really excellent reviews coming in, and thank you to everyone who has bought a copy, who has left a review, who has gifted a copy, and that those people have left reviews. I'm trying to get on the Llewellyn bestsellers list, so I need to sell 10,000 copies. And I won't know for about 6 months how well I've done, but it's a big push. So I'll let you know definitely as soon as I know. But this book isn't like a shelf decoration. It's really pretty. Look it up. The cover is absolutely beautiful. Very happy with how it turned out. But it is a working manual for sovereignty with source material, proper translations, and the work laid out plain. So I hope that landed for you. I hope it's helpful. I hope it's useful. I hope it gives you a bit of comfort that the Morrigan never fucking did. Slán go fóill.